Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. I begin in the name of Allah, the one who is most high, the one who is most merciful, the one who has given us the gift of contemplation, the gift of self-reflection, the tools needed to give ourselves perspective, that which is needed to take any form of suffering and turn it into meaning and fulfillment. I begin with Assalamu alaikum and peace be upon all of you, my brothers and sisters. We thank you for coming here, joining us on the martyrdom, the shahadat of Imam Ali, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. The death and the martyrdom of one of the world's most spiritual, most mindful individuals, an emblem of humanity, someone who came to this world to help lead people out of ignorance and to connect the dots that the Prophet left and to lead the ummah out of darkness into light. The topic of this lecture will be about mindfulness and the value of spirituality. As it stands here in the West, here in America, we're amongst the first when it comes to gun violence, when it comes to rates of depression, when it comes to rates of suicide, when it comes to rates of mental health problems, amongst the last when it comes to rates of happiness, amongst the rates of people reporting loneliness, amongst the last when it comes to mathematics, reading, and other measures of academic ability compared to other Western nations. Psychologists are scratching themselves in the head. What's happening? Our species is going the other way. Fundamentally, there are many different solutions and queries as to why this may be. One of the reasons is a lack of spirituality in people's lives. Spirituality, which is correlated in science with an enhanced sense of purpose, with an enhanced sense of meaning, with better social relationships, with a sense of community, with more fulfillment in people's lives. It isn't a surprise that the correlation of people becoming more agnostic and people becoming less spiritual is coinciding with higher rates of depression and suicide. This is within the same formula. This concept of mindfulness is used in science, it's used in psychology as a way to situate people. We live in a society where sitting by ourselves is not encouraged. In fact, we're probably taught to, look at the next stimulus, go from one thing to the next without giving ourselves time to breathe, without giving ourselves a time to reflect. And we can practice mindfulness right now. All of you are coming here from different situations, different events that have happened over the week. Maybe some emotions are within you. Let's just give ourselves a moment to be mindful of where we are. 30 seconds. You can look around you. You can look at your brothers and sisters. Just a moment to be with ourselves. What is our intention of being here? Maybe there's some emotions that we're carrying with us. We can reflect on these emotions. Are we carrying anger with us? Are we carrying despair with us? Are we carrying paranoia with us? Research suggests that individuals who give themselves time to be mindful, individuals who give themselves time to self-reflect, even if it's 5 minutes a day, these individuals have better well-being. They have less anxiety. They have less depression. They're better able to control their emotions. They have better self-control. They have better life satisfaction. They have better purpose in life. 5 minutes a day. The methodology that we have in Islam is 5 minutes, 5 times a day. How long does prayer take? For me, it takes 1 minute because I got to get to the next assignment. I got to go watch my Netflix. But the days where I'm feeling very mindful and spiritual, it'll take 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 7 minutes. It's only recently, within the last 20 to 30 years, that science has started to look at spirituality, started to look at the impact of religion on people's mental health. And the results that they've found are amazing. They're amazing in a secular sense, but these are things that we've known in our religion for 1,500 years. We don't need science to prove it for us. This has been in our deen. People will tell us, 30, 40 years ago, these events that we're doing, we're about to have an amal. Most psychologists would diagnose us as being schizophrenic. What are they doing? They're chanting to a being that may exist. Well, what is this? These people are manic. Much of science and psychology is established on anti-religious principles. It's only recently that they've started to accept spirituality and mindfulness. But alhamdulillah, this is built in our religion. We are at an advantage. I want to make that clear. With many, many, many other people suffering in this world, we are at an advantage. But it's up to us to take full use of that. Events like today, where we're having amal. Months like Ramadan, where we can either be mindless, we can do a fast, take naps, watch TV. I'm putting 2% of effort into it. Well, if you put 2% of effort into it, you're going to get 2% of the results. It's up to us to put 100% of the effort, then we'll start seeing 100% of the results. I also want to look at the figure of Imam Ali from a psychological lens today, on today's Shahadat. And I want to illustrate that by looking at 3 different stories of Imam Ali. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The Battle of Khandaq, the Battle of the Trench. This was a 30-day siege which happened when the Muslims battled the Quraysh. War is a place where people go to lose God. Statistics suggest that roughly 22 veterans commit suicide every day. That's 1 every 65 minutes. How can a place like war, a place where there's such bloodshed, a place where people are killing themselves, how can this possibly be a place where someone can connect even deeper with their Lord? Yet Imam Ali gives us the answer. Sheikh spoke about this yesterday, but there's a hadith that says, the strike of Ali in Khandaq is worth more than the entire worship of the humans and the jinns from now until the Day of Judgment. Why is that so? Well, we've heard the story before. The courageous, noble, valiant warrior Imam Ali being spat upon by a warrior. If I put myself in the situation, someone spits on me, someone humiliates me, I would probably get very angry. I know, because I get angry in situations that call for much less. Situations where I'm driving and someone cuts me off and my automatic reaction is to get angry at that person. Look at the figure of our Imam. In a place like war where he's spat upon, what does our Imam do? He controls himself. He takes a moment to go back. He paces back and forth. He takes a deep breath. He actually lets the warrior go. He isn't going to strike him. But the soldier provokes him until eventually Imam Ali kills him in battle. It's said on that day that the skies opened up and they said, there is no sword like Zulfiqar and there is no youth like Ali. This really strikes home with me because Imam Ali was 26 years old in this battle of Khandaq. Many of us here are in our mid to late 20s. Look at the figure of our Imam at this time and look at where we are in our states. Not to put anyone down, it's always a place where we can change, a place that we can work on ourselves. How does this line up psychologically? If we're bridging this hadith, this tale that we've heard since we were children, many of us, this tall tale, a myth, a fable, how can anyone possibly do this? Does this corroborate with modern science? It does. Modern science has shown that individuals who have enhanced spirituality tend to have much better emotional regulation. Carver and Scheer, who are two psychologists, propose a model that suggests individuals who internalize their religion are much better at self-control and self-monitoring. In fact, they found that intrinsic religiosity fully mediated the relationship between self-control and negative health-related feelings, such as self-esteem, anxiety, and depression. It makes sense that our Imam, even in a situation like the Battle of Khandaq, gave himself time to breathe, he had self-control in that dire situation. This is really important because cognitive science suggests that our brains are hardwired towards impulsivity. In science, in cognitive psychology, this is called the hot and cold systems of our brain. It's much easier for people to be impulsive. That's people's automatic reactions. This employs older systems of the brain. Adaptive decision-making, self-control, giving yourself time to self-reflect. This is called the cold part of the brain. This is the midbrain and the forebrain. This employs adaptive decision-making. This employs parts of the brain that people need to actively work on. Your brain is a tool. People's brains, you can evolve your brain into being one of mindless impulsivity, where anything happens and you react right away, or it can be a tool that you work on. And lots of the neuroscience coming from spirituality shows that people who practice spirituality have much larger forebrains. Forebrain is where people use adaptive decision making. That's the part of the brain that enhances emotional control. So it's of no wonder that our Imam can utilize that self-control in a situation where he's spat upon. Our second hadith has been one that has been in my mind since I was a child. One day, Imam Ali and a companion are walking past a church. One of his companions comments, "I wonder how much polytheism is being practiced in that church." Our Imam retorts, he replies, "I wonder how much monotheism is being practiced in that church." The theological ethic tale of this story is that we should appreciate any place that's revering God. Look at our society. Every day there's a different pawn shop, a different bar, a different strip mall being built. Even if there's a church being built, alhamdulillah, that's a place where people can find hope, sense of purpose, a place where people can connect. What's the psychological benefit of what Imam Ali said? This is very important because this is one of the most established principles in cognitive psychology. Our brain didn't evolve to be happy. People have to realize that. Our brains evolved to detect threats in our environment and to neutralize them. Happiness is a luxury that we have in the 21st century. Many of our ancestors didn't have this. Seek, fulfillment and trying to find happiness. This is one major component of people who have anxiety, by the way, is this constant rumination. This is called the negativity bias in psychology. Let me give you an example from research. They've done research, social psychologists have done research, where if you give a person 10 positive compliments and you give them 10 negative compliments, at the end of the day, what do you guys think? Do you guys think that they'll remember the positive compliments more or the negative compliments? They'll remember the negative compliments far more than the positive compliments. They won't even remember that someone said something positive to them. What? Someone said I have, no. They'll ruminate on the negative compliment over and over in their heads. What that person was wearing, the tone of the voice when they said it. How do we combat this? Again, the point that I'm trying to illustrate is that this is a conscious override that we have to make. How do we do that? Well, study shows that individuals who have enhanced spirituality tend to experience positive mood much fuller and much more enhanced than individuals without spirituality. Our Imam always looked at the positives of the situation. This doesn't mean that he was one-sided. Rather, he was hopeful and optimistic about the human condition. Rather than denigrating worshippers in a church, look at the compassion and eloquence of his reply. This is one of the principles in Sun Tzu's Art of War. It's much more strategic to make friends and allies than enemies. Ghorbani, who is an Iranian psychologist, has found that individuals who use religion for internal purposes tend to have higher self-esteem, higher well-being, lower anxiety, and lowered social dysfunction. Briki, who is an Indonesian psychologist, looked at it the other way. Because I know all of us are patting ourselves on the back. We're here on a Saturday night, right? We're all spiritual. Well, let's look at it on the other end. Research finds that individuals who use religion for only an extrinsic purpose, such as wanting to be rewarded or escaping punishment, tend to have higher levels of anxiety, higher levels of interpersonal conflicts with others, and low self-esteem. This is illustrated in a very famous hadith by our Imam. He says worship is of three kinds. Some worship due to desire of reward. This is the worship of a businessman. Some worship due to fear of punishment. This is the worship of a slave. And the third group, worship only for the gratitude and thanks of Allah. That is the worship of a free man. Who would have thought that 1,000 years later, psychologists are finding this in science? This is amazing. Brothers and sisters, we have to change how people view religion by following the mindful attitude of our Imam. Look at the gift of perspective, positive mood, forethought, and spirituality that our Imam had. Of course he did, he practiced it. Hadiths say that he would do over 1,000 units of prayer a day. The average American works 55 to 60 hours a week. That's 3,224 hours a year. Prayer takes what, 5 minutes? That's 25 minutes a day, times 7. Some of you are mathematicians, you're better at math than me. But in a yearly amount, the amount of time that we're putting into our spirituality is much, much, much less than we're putting into our financial selves, into our social roles, into our career aspects, some of us who are students, much less. But it's a work in progress. The thing about spirituality is that we don't have to compartmentalize it. At any moment, we can be mindful of God's presence. When we're speaking with a cashier at Dollar Tree, when we're driving home, at any moment we can reflect and be truly connected with Allah. Or we can be completely disconnected. It's all about the amount of time we're willing to put in. And it's also about consciously overriding the brain. This is a point that I really want to drive home, because it's your immediate reaction to be negative towards people. It's your immediate reaction to be impulsive towards people. It's your immediate reaction to, be down and out when circumstances of the world traumatize you, when things happen. We have to put in the work of invigorating spirituality into our lives, because then we'll start to see our relationships blossom. We'll start to see our perspective change. We'll start to see how those around us start to look at us. And most importantly, we'll see the change for ourselves. And we'll truly start to worship Allah for the gratitude of what He has given us. Here on a Saturday night, being with our brothers and sisters in this beautiful masjid. I'm immensely thankful and grateful to be here with you all. The combination of religion and spirituality, this means that both at an individual self-discipline, constant self-contemplation, combined with an objective moral foundation that shows us what's halal and haram, I fundamentally believe that this is the last shield that we have against evil in our society. We live in a world that's actively trying to destroy religion. The latest polls show that agnosticism and atheism are far exceeding religion, especially in the West, and especially amongst 18 to 25-year-olds. I believe a lot of it is because spirituality has been taken out of religion. The things that people want from religion, to be valued, to be part of a community, to have people be compassionate towards them, and an avenue for kindness, towards self-development, towards self-discipline, a lot of those have been taken out. We're lucky to have communities like Masjid al-Rasul that are actively involved in social work, towards changing community at a grassroots level, towards helping people who are oppressed and under-resourced, towards giving individuals like myself a sense of purpose, sense of brotherhood, sense of sisterhood. Masjids like these are following the example of our Imam. And when we talk about evil, what bigger evil was there than that was inflicted on our Imam in the holy month of Ramadan? Our Imam being struck so barbarically and viciously on his head while he was prostrating and connecting with his Lord. How can a person show such humility and mindfulness even when such trauma is inflicted upon him? Despite the atrocities that he saw in life that far outweigh any of ours, how can he show such restraint and class in the face of such tyranny and evil? Let us go back to Masjid al-Kufa. Let us remember our Imam in his last days. This is a figure that Kofi Annan, the Secretary General of the United Nations, said that if governments followed the example of Imam Ali, our world would be a much better place. Why was there so much hatred for Imam Ali? His caliphate only lasted for 4 years and 8 months, yet there were 3 wars, multiple assassination attempts. The Imam gave an answer. He said, if you follow the principles of justice, then people will naturally disperse around you. We live in a world where you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. Corporate globalism, favoritism. Look at the adalat, the justice of our Imam. There's a hadith that says a judge in his governorship, Abu Aswad, gave a ruling to a couple. The Imam sent a report to that judge. He gave him a letter saying, you've been relieved of your duties. Abu Aswad was confused. I did everything right, I'm enacting the Sharia when I work with people. He didn't understand. The Imam said, you've been relieved of your duties because when you were working with the couple, you raised your voice higher than theirs. Look at the amount of justice in our Imam, the amount of humility, the amount of compassion that he enacted in his government. And look at the opposite in the Khawarij. People who were externally religious, I just talked about that, people who are externally religious. These are people who they said would fast all day and pray all night. Yet internally they were twisted and wicked, completely devoid of spirituality. They had wanted revenge on our Imam since the days of his youth for all the victories he had amassed. They had ruminated and plotted on their revenge for decades, hoping to catch the Imam in a vulnerable position. And so they did at Masjid al-Kufa. As our beloved Imam performed his morning prayer, let us connect ourselves with how our Imam must have felt, how he knew this morning would be his last, how he had told his sons Hassan and Hussein not to accompany him to the mosque on this auspicious day, how he remembered the words of our Prophet, O Ali, I see before me thy beard dyed with the blood of thy forehead. How the birds began wailing in anguish as the Imam walked over to the masjid, and one of the Imam's servants attempted to quiet the birds down. The Imam said, leave them alone, for their cries are only lamentations foreboding my death. With each step our Imam took towards his morning prayers, he knew it would be his last. He knew the same fate would be delivered by similar wicked men on his son Hussein, on the blood-covered sands of Karbala, and how Hassan would be poisoned by the depraved Muawiyah. And so the Imam walked towards death. But the Imam welcomed death. The Imam said, "I welcome martyrdom. It is as sweet to me as being in a desert and coming upon an oasis of water." He welcomed martyrdom. As he prostrated, a man behind him pretended to pray as well. But little did the congregation know that this man had a poison-tipped sword sheathed in his clothes. Let our hearts pour out for our Imam, because the Khawarij meant to strike at the symbol, the true face of Islam, the true face of where our Ummah could have went. They meant to kill the Imam, of course, but what they truly wanted to destroy was what he represented. The one who had been patient, the one who was the rightful caliph. Yes, my brothers and sisters, it was the Imam they meant to kill literally, but the compassion, spirituality, and essence of what he represented metaphorically that they wanted to destroy. Will we afford them that privilege? The Khawarij have not left. They're still here in today's society. People who purport to be religious externally, but inside they're wicked and twisted. Or will we honor our Imam through our deeds, through our actions, and through our beliefs? After the Imam was struck on his head, as the blood came pouring down from his forehead, he said, "I succeeded. By the Lord of the house, I have succeeded." It is said that a dark cloud amassed over the Masjid al-Kufa, and the angel Gabriel cried, "The handle and axis of faith has been killed." And let us go to the final will of Imam Ali. The final words of the Imam as he lay on his deathbed. What did he want from our Ummah? The Imam said, "I advise you to have piety in Allah, and don't run after the world, for the world will surely deceive you. I advise you to always say the truth and work for God. I advise you to always oppose the oppressors and favor and have support for the oppressed ones. I advise you to always be mindful of Allah and don't die except as believers in Allah. I advise you to bring reconciliation in your families and communities, for the Prophet narrates that reconciliation between two opposing parties is better than the entire deeds of worship." As the Imam lay on his deathbed, he cried, "I advise you, my Ummah, to fear Allah and always remember the orphans. Make sure no orphan in our society is oppressed. I advise you to implement the Quran, the Holy Quran, into your lives. I advise you to make sure to take care of your neighbors and pay charity, for charity extinguishes the anger of Allah. I advise you to take care of the progeny of Al-Muhammad. Take care of Hassan, Hussein, and Zainab. I advise you to not seek needless revenge, for only one man has killed me." Even on his deathbed, the Imam shows such humility and mindfulness towards the person who has inflicted the deadly wound on his head. He says, "Before you bring me my food, bring it to my killer. Before you bring me my water and milk, bring it to my killer." Look at the difference in character between the two. And even in this, his last days, after being struck by Ibn Muljam, we have the science to back this up. Research shows that individuals who have higher levels of spirituality adjust to trauma, including cancer, major accidents, death of loved ones, and diseases much better. Researchers say that individuals who possess spirituality possess the inner capacities needed to transform suffering and trauma into meaning. This is called cognitive appraisals. This is why our Imam, with blood running down his forehead, still says to his companions, "Give water to my killer, the way you have given water to me, and give shelter to my killer, the way you have given shelter to me." The Imam even says, "If I am killed by this one single blow, then deliver the same lethal force to my killer, but no more than that. Please do not mutilate his body." Look at the justice and nobility of our Imam. Tell me what other figures are there in the entirety of history that possess these qualities? This level of unscrupulous justice, compassion, spirituality, and mindfulness. This is a tale that we've all heard, the death of our Imam. But the question to be left is, how can I extrapolate these lessons into my own life? In such a fast-paced world, where anger consumes me when someone looks at me wrong, how can I show such compassion? The Prophet narrates, if you see all the people taking one path, and you see Ali taking the other path, he asked his ummah, which path would you take? Research shows that most people, 85 to 90% of people, tend to follow the others. Routinely, this happens in research. It's a very famous experiment called Milgram's experiment, where people were asked to shock other people. Willfully, they had a button and they had to give shocks because there was a person standing next to them, a doctor telling them to do so. 85 to 90% of people did it because they said, yeah, the guy is telling me to do it. They heard the screams and cries of the person in front of them. Yet they still did it, 85 to 90% of people. So only a few 10% that stood up for justice in that situation. This was very famous research. I think there's a movie on Netflix about it. Milgram's experiment. Will we be that 10%? Injustice happens to us all the time. Injustice happens all around us. There's injustice happening outside of these doors. Or will we be that 10% that stands up? This is the value of our religion. In a society that's actively trying to destroy our way of life. In a world where anybody with over 100,000 followers is revered and idolized, considered a celebrity. These figures, we need to imbue the spirit of Imam Ali more so than ever. Not only as a figure for Islam, but for all of the world. The Sheikh spoke of a wonderful story that we were speaking about yesterday, where during the invasion of Iraq, British soldiers came upon the haram of Imam Ali, the tomb of Imam Ali. And the Sheikh said that the lieutenant gave, what is that called, a salute during the invasion of Iraq. The lieutenant said, the person who lies in that tomb is one of the most courageous people in all of the world, who ever lived. Ralph Waldo Emerson is one of the West's most profound writers, often quoted Imam Ali. He who has 1,000 friends has not a friend to spare, and he who has one enemy will meet him everywhere. Nowadays, more than ever, the world needs figures like Imam Ali, in all sincerity, both at an individual level and at a systems level. The level of attention to detail in his justice and his practices. We live in a society where a micrograin of injustice is committed every day. People are locked up for bogus charges. The entirety of their lives are spent in prison. Judges are bought. Politicians are bought. The head of the presidency is an orange buffoon. politics and morality is crumbling around us. I am sincere when I say places like these are places where all of us need to come reflect, speak with one another, build an infrastructure where if justice and injustice happens to one of our members, we have a force that they have to reckon with. Where we have a political organization, an organization that speaks on behalf of law. Because injustice will come, it's already coming. But I stand resolute with all of you, my brothers and sisters, in the face of oppression, in the face of injustice, in the face of calamity. Before we begin with the prayers and amal led by Brother Abdul Rahim, I just wanted to thank Mashallah Rasul. This is a community that isn't united because we have the same skin color, because we speak the same language, because our fathers know each other. Most of the people who are here because of the love of Allah, are here because we've been afforded a second chance, many of us. Are here because we want to be here. I hope all of you will join and support this community by volunteering, becoming members, or lending any of your skills to our collective efforts. We have a toy drive program happening, which Sister Hamida has been gracious enough to build. I think we have about 50 toys as of now. We want to reach 100 toys that we can actively give to the children of Fifth Ward. So we hope you guys will help in that regard. Also, children's books are really good also, toys and children's books. Anything else? And we also have a share a meal program every Saturday where we feed over 100 people. People come in here, they're given food, they're given shelter, they're given a place to sit down. More than anything, I'm proud to know that the lineage of our Imam is being continued with the dignified work of Mashallah Rasul. I stand resolute in saying that. And inshallah, we can build a much more vibrant, stronger community, bit by bit, little by little. And with that, I say Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Thank you all. Thank you all.